Hey everybody, welcome to Elseworlds Exchange. I'm Sal, and I'm joined today by Jason Inman. Jason, you're back, man. It's been
I'm back,
like
and it does feel like yesterday, and I'm also secretly Electric Superman.
Oh, are you? When? At what point in the episode will you split off and become the Electric Red Superman?
Oh, Jason Red, he'll show up at about the 30-minute mark.
Okay, cool. All right, I look forward to that.
And then the Millennium Giants will show up, these giant cow creatures, and they'll tell you to stop the podcast.
Yeah, and I will be gladly happy to do it because by that point,
yep. And then I'll be replaced by an Alex Ross painting.
Ooh,
that'll make me look like I do right now.
Right, that sounds great. And I'll grow a mullet just for good measure.
Please. There needs to be more mullets in the world.
I know. In high school, I almost had a mullet. I was almost there. I was just growing. It was just everywhere. So
all right.
But yeah, no, it was not a good scene. Once people started making fun of Superman with a mullet, I was like, oh no, this has to go.
Like, I'll fully admit, when Superman cut his hair for the wedding special, at first I was like, he looks weird.
Right?
Yeah.
But
my first Superman comic was The Death of Superman. So
I think mine was too, because my parents, I remember I was reading comics, my parents were like, yo, you got to go down to the comic book store. And I'm like, that's the first time you've ever asked me to go there. Usually it's
you better go down there, Sal.
Yeah, and I'm like, why? And they're like, because Superman's dying. Didn't you read this newspaper article about it? And I'm like, no. I don't
What's
care
a
about
newspaper?
Superman. Yeah. And so we got 2 copies. And I cracked mine open. I'm like, this is dope. And then I read until he got married. I read Superman until he got married.
Oh, wow.
I was like, holy crap. And then I remember somewhere around like around Conduit, I was like, what am I doing? Like, I don't like Superman.
I like Conduit, though. I like Conduit.
The Conduit needs to come back, man.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. He needs a rebirth, if you will.
He needs a rebirth. No change in the costume, though. Just
no, you can't.
No,
you can't change that. Too many piping wires.
The pipes. He looks like. Yeah, he looks dope. But Jason, you're here for a number of reasons. Not the first of which is, of course,
to enjoy your company.
Of course, yes. And what better way to celebrate that joining of minds than to talk about a book you're coming out with? You're making a book. It's called Jupiter Jet. Volume 2. You've already made a great book of Jupiter Jet, and
thanks, man.
And now there's more. And so
yes,
I'm just gonna let you take it away because you could sell this book way better than I could. So jump in.
Yes, our new comic. This is co-written by me and my wife Ashley Victoria Robinson. It's the sequel to our Ringo-nominated all-ages series Jupiter Jet, and we're making Jupiter Jet 2 because for years people have been asking us when is that going to happen. Yeah. So we're here. Jupiter Jet and the Forgotten Radio is the sequel. It is on Kickstarter right now. If you go to jupiterjetcomic.com, it is basically continuing the story of our all-ages adventure comic, and Jupiter Jet is now 17. In Volume 1, she was 16. And she's been keeping her city of Olympic Heights safe for the last year. She's the best superhero in her world. And but she's getting a little antsy. She wants to go to space. She wants to fly around the universe and free the human race from their alien oppressors called the Praetors. And then Praetor Pluto was our villain in Volume 1, if you read it out there. But she soon meets this character called the Black Flyer, who arrives in orbit and basically kicks her butt and shows her that it takes more than a jetpack to be a superhero. And of course, at the same time, her sidekick, Chuck, her little brother, finds a mysterious and long-forgotten radio that they can possibly use to defeat the Black Flyer. So we're very excited about it. A lot of people have been asking us for our sequel. And when we say also all-ages comics, we mean that it is a comic book like when you and I, the days of Conduit, when
yes.
you could hand a comic book to your grandma, to a 5-year-old, and they didn't need to know anything else, and they could read it. That's what Jupiter Jet and the Forgotten Radio is. It is an optimistic, energetic, fun comic book, because that's the comic books that I miss right now. Instead of these ones that are existential crises and based around the multiverse exploding every 5 seconds, this is just a comic book about a 7-year-old girl with a jetpack punching robots in the face. And does she enjoy that, or does she want to do more? That's what this comic's about. So you can find it right now. It is an independent comic book because it's a labor of love, because we're not through the big two. We're only being published by Action Lab. And because of that, that means that Ashley and I have to pay for the entire things ourselves. And that's why Kickstarter is such an amazing medium, because you guys are basically just pre-ordering the book. And, fun fact, Ashley and I don't get paid for our comics. We take no page rate for any of our Kickstarters because we are doing this as a labor of love. So if this lovely comic book sounds like up your alley, go to JupiterJetComic.com. And there's a link in the description, I believe.
That's right. There is. JupiterJetComic.com. Check it out down there.
Yeah. Got a bunch of cool rewards. Check them out.
Yeah. Oh, man, no. The Kickstarter, it's actually kind of amazing to think about this thing that only came about a few short years ago. Mm-hmm. And without it, neither of us would have had a book that exists in the world.
Yeah. That's the amazing thing about Kickstarter. Like it gets rid of the gatekeepers of the traditional publishing company.
Yeah. No, it's great. Yeah. Everyone gets the books they want. Isn't that kind of special?
Really cool.
But yeah,
and I hope you love Superjet. Check it out.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, check it out. I have my copy over there. It's
sweet.
Yeah.
Thank you, dude.
Of course. Yeah.
I feel honored that it's on the ComicPOP set.
Oh yeah, no, it's
or in the ComicPOP office. I don't know.
It's in the office. The set doesn't have the books. The books would crush whatever we have back there. But I have a like 15 strong square giant thing from IKEA that has all the trade paperbacks and hardcovers we have, and it's just choked. I actually have to. It's full.
It weighs 700 pounds.
It does. It weighs probably 1,000 pounds. It's nuts. Just by itself, it weighed a couple 100 pounds. But anyway, so we're going to talk about editorially mandated stories that change the status quo of our characters. More specifically, we're going to be talking about the whole Superman identity thing, and it's kind of inspired by a theory that I came up with recently that Jason, you were kind of impressed with. I take a small bit of pleasure in that. I'm excited whenever say something that excites you, because I'm like, you're a good litmus test for quality. So I like to say like, hey,
thank you. You say a lot of stuff that excites me. I can't remember what Elseworlds episode you were doing with Joel.
One,
yeah, but you brought up this whole idea about this Superman one more day theory. Now, everybody out there, if you don't know, back in the day when Marvel decided that they didn't want Spider-Man to be married anymore, they made this event called One More Day. And I think we're going to go into that in more details, but we're not going to bury the lead. Sal had this amazing theory about that they might be doing the same thing to Superman currently.
Yeah.
Again, we have no details about this. It's just an idea in Sal's mind, and I kind of wanted to quiz Sal about it. So, Sal, they just in Brian Michael Bendis' Superman run.
Yep.
Superman took off his glasses and said, "Hey, I'm Clark Kent."
Yeah.
He did
almost no reason.
He did a press. Look, you're kind of right on that. There really is no setup for it. He just decides, well, I don't want to lie to the world anymore.
Right. Which you can argue that's a Superman characteristic. He's been pretty okay with that lie forever. I don't know.
I just want to point out to the DC Comics editorial team, who does a fine job on many comics, that the last time Superman revealed his identity, about 3.5 years ago, the storyline was called Truth.
Yep.
And the current storyline is called Truth. So somebody hasn't been Googling. Just want to Google is a thing. You might want to check it out.
What's fascinating about that is that it's the same editors. I don't know what's happening. They probably edited the same damn book.
But so at the time of this recording, we've only seen the issue basically where he did the giant press conference.
Yes.
And it's going to have ramifications throughout the world. They're doing a couple specials. We haven't read those specials at the time of this, but it's really going to affect a lot of things in Superman. Because to me, Clark Kent is such an inherent part of that storyline.
Yes.
And to me, Clark Kent is the secret identity.
Right.
So, Sal, where did this theory come from? Do you want to just tell your theory and I'll interrupt you when I want to get more details?
That sounds great. Yeah.
Okay,
with
cool.
respect to this, I had always heard, and this isn't me using a position I had at a previous employer and manipulating. This is legitimately just I remember reading in a Wizard one year. Joe Quesada said when he started working at Marvel that the bigwigs at DC wanted to unmarry Superman. That they always kind of regarded the marriage of Superman and Lois Lane as a mistake. They were really kind of goaded into doing it because they were going to do it in the show.
By the way, that is slightly true. I bet what Joe Quesada is talking about, you can find this. Have you ever heard of the Superman 2000 pitch?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so in the early 2000s, don't know the exact year, remember when Jeff Loeb, Joe Kelly, and Steven Seagal, those group took over the Superman titles?
Yeah.
You know, because everybody remembers it because it was the big Ed McGuinness Superman, which I love.
Right.
But anyways, they were not the original team. The original team that pitched for Superman was Grant Morrison, Mark Waid, Mark Miller, and I can't remember who the fourth one was, but it's another big name. And they all were like, we'll all do our titles and we'll loosely think. And they did this giant pitch, which I think you can find if you Google enough. And I believe it's called Superman 2000.
Okay.
So this would be in like 99, 98-ish. But the idea is that they would start in the...
Right.
Their pitch was that they wanted to reboot Superman, or they would tell Superman stories building to the year 2000.
Okay.
And the idea was that in the year 2000, in Y2K,
Right.
that Brainiac was going to invade, you know, Metropolis and do this thing, and nanites and stuff like that. And everybody on Earth was going to be infected with like nanites and stuff, like Brainiac nanites.
Okay.
And through this storyline, over the course of this year, like Superman was going to have his identity revealed. There were going to be a lot of changes. Certain characters were going to be killed. But it was all going to build to the year 2000 to when these nanites would rewrite the world.
What?
And Superman would be like the only person that would remember.
Oh.
Okay, I could be wrong. It might not be Brainiac nanites. It might be a Mr. Missile Spitlick as well in there as well.
But I remember hearing about it.
But I know.
Yes. Okay.
So again, I'm paraphrasing this document off the top of my head. I'm certain it's quite different. But anyways, it was going to lead to that New Year's Eve 2000, boom, Superman was going to be the only one that was going to remember the DC universe as it was.
Okay.
But the only big change that they were going to do, really, was that at this point, Lois and Clark aren't married, and she doesn't know that he's Superman.
Right. Okay.
So to go back to your point, I bet that's the pitch that Joe Quesada was talking about.
Interesting. Because he doesn't really dwell on it too much, but he does say like that they regarded the marriage as a mistake and they really don't want to do it anymore, and they want to tell stories about like a young, unmarried Superman. And I'm like, are you for real? Like that's like the story potential of Superman dating was explored like maybe in John Byrne's Man of Steel when he kissed Wonder Woman that one time. Like, I mean, really?
The best the Silver Age came up with was they were like, how about Superman dates a mermaid?
The mermaid, like
Lori Lemaris, my friend.
Yeah, that drove me nuts. I remember we did Superman Year One and on back issues, and
she shows up in it.
She shows up, and I'm like, now you may think this is bizarre, but here's the kicker: she's been in 3 eras of continuity, and they're like, no. But yeah, no, man. Like, so they're like, yeah, we want to tell these rich stories about Superman dating, and so Quesada took
Superman catting around.
Yeah.
Hey, baby.
But
that's what I think when I see Superman. I want Superman going to bars.
Yeah, picking up chicks. Like, I want him. Today it'd be great. He could be join Tinder or something.
Oh yeah, Superman on Tinder.
It'd be great.
Oh shit, I'm crushing the phone when I swipe right.
Right. Oh no, I swiped so hard.
Yeah.
I literally was like, do I still have those Joe Quesada emails where he told me that? Oh yes, I do.
Oh wow.
I'm not gonna read them here, but like.
No.
I was like, maybe I should.
But anyways.
So he's like, okay, so the DC wanted to do this, and for him he was like, and that's Superman. So if they were willing to go that hard, continuity wise with Superman,
to the big guy.
Then maybe I can do the same thing over here with Marvel with Spider-Man, because according to him, everyone at Marvel, all the editors, all the writers, they were sick of a married Spider-Man, kept getting hamstrung with these boring stories about Peter Parker being married. What am I going to do with this Mary Jane thing? I remember Spider-Man when he was a single, like, gadbout, out there swinging around, dating Gwen until she died, like, like all kinds of fun stuff. And so Quesada's like, I'll just steal the idea they had over with Superman and apply it to Spider-Man. And I think and this could be wrong, but I feel like there was a discussion where they were like, no, Superman will make a deal with Neron or Lady whatever the hell her name is. the
Lady Blaze.
Lady Blaze, thank you, or Lady Blaze, and undo the marriage. Well, we got our own nefarious character, Mephisto. We'll just have him do that. That like the Mephisto deal came about well before One More Day was even written. It was just like, so he'll make a deal with Mephisto. Mephisto will change reality. Boom. That's it.
Can I ask you a question real quick before we move there? Do you like Peter Parker being married or being single?
I've always.
Where you fall?
Well, for me, I grew up with Peter Parker being married already.
Yes.
I like Peter Parker being married. I've always loved those stories. I thought they were kind of like sweet, like in home, like, you know, home feeling. Like it's like, it's.
I agree. He should be married.
Well, thank you very much. I agree too. I feel like I've loved him being married forever. The idea of him being unmarried. I remember in the 90s, Marvel used to put, when they were really desperate and dying, they shoved these little like cards into their books that had a little like checklist of for the reader that said things like, would you like to see Storm, or would you like to see Rogue and Gambit get married? Would you buy 2 Wolverine books a month? And
really?
Yeah.
When did they do? I don't remember that.
I think it was like
when
90.
Did they do that?
It was between 94 and 96, but like it was.
Wow.
These are real questions. Would you like?
They were doing consumer testing.
Yes. Would you like to see Sabretooth as a hero or a villain? And one of them was, would you like Mary Jane to stay together or get a divorce? And this was during the Clone Saga. That was when those things were coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I don't know. I thought you people knew this shit. But that card was a scary indicator that I was like, is that even in question? Why would you ever want to change that? But apparently, according to to Joe and the editors at Marvel, like everyone wanted to change that, and so Joe just took the Superman blueprint and put it on Superman or on Spider-Man, because for him, and this is a thing he said to me in person, was Spider-Man is the Superman of the Marvel universe.
I mean, that's true. It really is.
I don't disagree. But yeah, so Bendis knows this because Joe Quesada brought Bendis into Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
And so Bendis goes to DC, he gets Superman, he kind of like almost incepts this whole universe where he's like, so I heard from Joe, who used to work for DC, that you were going to do this to Superman, and when you did it to Spider-Man, I was writing for Marvel at the time, so now I'm going to DC, and maybe I can take the Joe Quesada plan and apply that to Superman like you were going to do originally. It's like this whole weird cyclical thing. And I think
it's very comic books Inception.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I can imagine the DC people being like, what a great idea. Like, yeah, you had that 20 years ago. But I theorize that Man of Steel, the Superman miniseries that introduces Rogol-Zar and pitches this whole like universe of Superman Bendis books, that was
and really should have just been the first arc of the regular series.
It was. And it straight up was. I think that it was a testing ground for whether or not the One More Daying of Superman is palatable to readers.
Oh, interesting. Because yes, in that book, there's no Lois and there's no John.
No, and by the way, it's all drawn by like Ivan Rice or something like that for the most
Superstars.
Yeah, Superstars. Yeah. But Fabic draws all the where are John and Lois pages. I think that originally it was just, here's the book, here's Man of Steel, or here's the first arc of Superman, and it's a testing ground for, what if when Bendis came on board, we just one more date Superman, and they're like, let's show what that world would be like, and if the audience loves it and they don't ask where John and Lois are, then we'll just say that's what happened, and we'll do like a lost story arc later that explains where they went.
Mm-hmm.
But that, like, as not necessarily as it was coming out, but more like when it was starting to get solicited, they got cold feet and they're like, Fabic, can you draw like a 6-page story that explains where Lois and John went? And they like shoved them in there, and it's why like you keep getting repeated pages throughout the whole arc about like where they were, because really there's only like 4 or 5 pages that tell you where John and Lois went. Which also, by the way, might explain why Mr. Oz is so different and crappy compared to what he was like before. It's like because he only had a few pages to explain where it all went. But that essentially Man of Steel was their way of saying like of kind of like testing it out. Like, hey, would you like an unmarried Superman? Here are a few sexy ladies for him to date if you do.
Here's a few sexy
he
ladies.
He literally invents 3 different sexy ladies for Superman to date that he meets in that arc.
I mean, you are correct. Like, there's the fire chief lady.
Yep.
There's the new gossip reporter. And who's the third?
Oh man, hang on. The African American woman who works for the Daily Planet. She's like the mole.
Oh, the one that becomes the red cloud, red mist thing.
Yes.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you're right. I mean, man, I'll say, like, there's no evidence but that's interesting. That is interesting. Although, let me ask you this, because and we talked about this in the last video we recorded a little bit. We both agree that Jonathan Kent is like one of the best things that DC has done in years.
It's the best idea that came out of Rebirth, and it might be the best idea for Superman in decades.
And the crazy thing about it? Didn't even come out of Rebirth. It's a convergence idea.
It's a convergence idea, I know. That's the funniest thing ever.
It comes from DC's convergence, an event that everyone dislikes.
Yeah, that no one is a fan of.
That no one is a fan of. And it's the only thing that they kept from that event.
I know, but they retconned it, though.
Yeah, it's funny because, and my best example of that is my wife, Ashley, who is also my co-writer on Jupiter Jet and the Forgotten Radio. Link in the description, plug yourself. Anyways, she says, and this is honest, that she was not, when we first got together, she was not a fan of Superman.
Right.
And I was a fan of Superman because I come from Kansas. I grew up on a farm. Superman is like one of 2 people that people in Kansas have that are famous. We have Superman, and we have Dorothy Gale from The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, yeah. That's not bad.
And they're both fictional characters, and that's all we got.
Right.
Like the third one we have is like Don Johnson.
It beats Iowa. You got James T. Kirk, and that's kind of it.
I don't know. James T. Kirk's pretty big, but yes, we have Superman. Superman can punch the crap out of James T. Kirk. Anyways, so she was not a fan, and so I was trying to convince her. And it wasn't really until Jonathan Kent in the DC Rebirth area that she was like, oh, wow. And she says, and I love this point where she was like, I didn't know that I needed Superman as a dad to like Superman.
Right.
And it's interesting because when you back up and you think about that, Superman is our dad. Like, none of us can be Superman. None of us.
No.
We can maybe be Robin. That's the reason why Robin is the audience character in that book. That's the whole reason why they introduce him in that book.
Yeah.
But we can never be Superman because we're not from another planet and we're not completely invulnerable.
Right.
But Superman in stories comes along and tells characters how to act.
Right.
What to do, how to succeed, your dreams.
Yeah.
That's what a dad does.
Well,
Superman has always been our dad, and they found a way to physicalize it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's true. He's actually the best dad because he doesn't proselytize.
He is the best dad. That's right.
He just lives by example. And he's not angry with you if you fail. He's just disappointed.
Yeah, he is the best dad. And I think that's what everybody responded to. Everybody was like, oh, we've had Close and Clark married for about a decade.
Right.
We've had Lois and Clark single for about 60 years. But we've never had Lois and Clark raising a family. And again, I think it's very notable because look, the CW just greenlit Superman and Lois.
Yes.
That we are getting that show in the fall. We're going to at least get 20 episodes of it. At least one season. And the aspect that they decided to focus on was the Superman family.
Yeah.
That says something. That they feel that that's the most way to sell this concept now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, it's kind of fascinating how, like, the audience, the TV universe, like, everyone kind of gets why this works. Yeah. And the only ones who don't really seem to get that this is a big deal and kind of important for the longevity of Superman are the people who write Superman.
Yes. So, okay, you think Man of Steel was a testing ground?
I do, and I think that the response was so vitriol that they were like, okay, never mind, we'll do it later. like we'll do it later. You know, we'll kick the can down the road, and the
So you so you think the identity is the next step of this?
Well, I think this is right out of the Joe Quesada playbook. I think that for Bendis, he's like, okay, he's like, because I can imagine the bigwigs being like, well, they didn't respond to it. How are we going to do it though? And Bendis going like, you got to justify it. You got to put them in danger. How did it work for Spider-Man? Part of the reason why people are arguing, the people that had a problem with One More Day don't have a problem with it happening. They have a problem with him making a deal with the devil. And even then, he had to make a deal with the devil because of something that was actually, like, story-wise, a threat. Like, so we got to have him like, Spider-Man releases his identity like he shouldn't have, like no one would. Came out of left field. So did Superman's. Now what we got to do is have somebody threaten his family. I'm thinking Lex Luthor.
Do you listen to the amazing podcast Word Balloon?
I have listened to it. I'm aware it's an incredible show.
Okay. Yeah, John Suntress hosts this amazing show. He had Mark Miller on there at the end of last year. And they talked a little bit about Civil War. And Mark Miller says in this interview, again, that was probably recorded in November of last year, Mark Miller says that revealing Spider-Man's identity was not his idea.
No.
It was Joe Quesada's.
I remember Quesada taking credit for that, like when it happened.
Yeah. And Mark Miller kind of said that he was like, the only reason why we kind of agreed to it was because we knew One More Day was happening,
right?
And that would reset it.
Yeah. So
because Mark Miller was kind of like, well, you can't reveal his identity because like he needs a secret identity. But like if you're gonna change it all down the line, then sure, let's put it in.
Exactly. Well, if it's only going to be 6 months worth of stories, let's get those stories and then get out. Yeah. And with Superman, I think.
So okay, so let's keep going down your theory, right. Which I think you might be exactly right, man. All right, so Superman has revealed a secret identity.
Yep.
Okay. So you think the next step is Luthor is just going to torture the people of the Daily Planet, like attack him hard, kind of like the Kingpin in One More Day.
Exactly, because I mean, like that moment in the issue when Superman reveals the identity, we saw Apex Lex, and then he morphs into Lex Luthor, the character that Bendis clearly wants to write about, and I love it because Brainiac says to Lex, "How did you not know this?" And Lex says nothing.
Fair point.
He looks horribly embarrassed, and it's like, yeah, I think that this is going to be an ego thing for him, where he's like, you know what I mean? He's just going to be beside himself, and he's going to have to be like, I have to destroy you. So we may see like a big resurgence of like the Superman Rogues Gallery, and then it turns out Lex is behind it all or something. But like it's going to be
like a Superman Revenge Squad.
Yeah. Now that being said,
I love the Superman Revenge Squad.
Oh yeah, we know that. I love Bendis to death, and Bendis is probably like at least 75% of the reason why I'm back in comics.
Let's say this. Let's put this out there.
Yeah.
Whatever we think of his stories, Brian Michael Bendis, one of the greatest comic book writers of the 20th century, or 21st century.
I agree.
Easily.
I believe that.
So let's put his bony feeties up on Front Street.
Exactly. Like,
all right, let's continue.
Like, if he gives me a punch, I agree. I'll understand. But like, don't let me. Don't misunderstand me.
Yeah.
I love his work.
We know you're watching, Brian.
Right. Yeah, he's a big fan. I met him at New York Comic Con 2 years ago. He had never seen a single episode of anything I'd ever made, but his handler was a big fan. So,
interesting.
His handler came up for. By the way,
he's aware.
Oh yeah. Oh no, because his handler came up for a selfie, and Bendis was like, "What the fuck?" Like he was like, and he goes, "Who are you?" And I'm like, I do a YouTube channel. He's like, "Oh, okay." And his handler was like, "This guy's awesome. He loves your stuff." Blah blah blah. And he goes, "Okay, well, let's talk about some stuff." And we had a nice little conversation.
That's great.
Yeah, but
that's
now
really
we've seen the show.
By the way, Brian Michael Bendis. Hi, Brian.
Hi.
Brian Michael Bendis has read Jupiter Jet in Volume 1 and he liked it.
Oh, that's great. Oh, that.
Yeah. He picked it up and he sent us a very nice message about it.
No shit. That's.
So. Yeah.
I would love that. Are you kidding
So,
me?
anyways.
Oh, yeah.
Great writer.
Right. That being said, that being said, I don't even know where I was going with that. I guess just the I remember now.
We're at Superman Revenge Squad.
Yes.
Is where we were.
When Bendis takes on a character, Daredevil, Spider-Man, the Avengers, Superman, he's only read 3 trades of that character, and then focuses his runs on derivatives from those trades. So, like, if he's read the X-Men, he's read 3 X-Men books. And they might be really important X-Men books. But he hasn't read the other X-Men books. And with Superman, I am certain he has read What Do You Get for the Man Who Has Everything? And What Do You Get for the Man Who Has Everything, written by Alan Moore. If you're only going to read 3 or 4 Superman stories, I wouldn't judge you if that was one of them.
That should be one of them.
That story is a great template that Bendis could use for his run until the Crisis, where Lex Luthor kind of like is... I mean, I think it's Brainiac who's actually behind everything. Well, it's Nixon Spitlick who's behind everything.
No, it's Mixel Spitlick is who it is.
Which would be a pretty
By the way, I
reveal.
love that reveal. Also, I just want to point out the last time we put Superman's identity back into the bag, it was Mixel Spitlick in Rebirth.
So,
Because remember that story? Okay, so it's interesting. It's an interesting that what if he is recreating whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow, because that begins with an identity.
I said, what do you get for the Man Who's Everything? I meant, what do you get for whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow? I'm sorry. That was
both Alan Moore stories. They're very mixable. It's okay.
I'm sure he's read that one too.
Oh, sure. Do you think, who else do you think, from what you read, and I've read it too, but like, you seem to be more attuned to it than I am.
Right.
Do you think there's any other creators besides Alan Moore? Like, is he a Byrne?
Right.
John Byrne guy? Like, what other Superman run do you think he's pulling from?
Okay, so I think he had to at least be aware of the Byrne run because they used the Byrne Man of Steel font for the title of his Man of Steel book. Which, by the way, I didn't realize how 80s it looked until I saw it on a modern comic. I was like, oh my god, I hate this logo.
I love it. I don't care.
I love it. I love it now. I was like, because I went back to my minutes. I'm like, oh my god, it's the same logo. So like, I think maybe
I understand your point. Yeah,
but he didn't. He didn't use anything from it. So I don't know. But it could. Here's the thing. After the Crisis, then we'll know. Because if we see shades of Byrne, then we'll know. But like, the Rogel Zar stuff, which I think is some of the worst contributions to Superman's history in the last 50 years. Not close to death in the red and blue stuff. Like, I don't know.
And the Millennium Giants, don't forget them.
Right.
Everyone's favorite.
Everyone loves the Millennium Giants. Don't get me started.
Everyone loves them. I mean, it's the thing I hear the most in comic book shops. They're like, when is DC going to bring back the Millennium Giants? The story everybody wants.
Everyone wants the Bloodlines characters back.
Everyone wants Bloodlines back. Man, like, when are they going to listen?
They did bring back that book for like a minute.
Are you serious?
Yeah, they brought it back.
How did I miss that?
It was like
when did that happen?
I think it was like a tie-in to something else. But I remember seeing like, Bloodlines. Okay. By the way, Bloodlines is not in trade.
More Bloodlines.
Yeah. No Bloodlines trade. What the hell?
They recently, a couple years ago, they collected, what was that storyline in the late 80s? Legacies? Millennium. Yeah, they recently collected that one.
Yes. I bought the trade.
So I'm actually surprised. Yeah, I'm surprised that they haven't actually brought... they just haven't... I thought that was going to start the trend of DC reprinting all their crazy crossover events. Like year one. Anyways.
Or 2000 AD or what? No, Armageddon 2001?
What about the Millennium Apes? Everyone loves that. Or Jail Apes. Everybody remembers that storyline.
Yeah.
Why is that not in trade, DC? Everybody loves monkeys. Anyways,
monkeys. But yeah,
okay,
but I think, as far as what he's read, I feel like, the ones I can point to are the Moore books. I don't know how much he's read, Like,
okay.
There's some things you can tell, like, he read the Kree-Skrull War, and by read, I mean skimmed. But, like, with Superman, I feel like it's definitely very selective. I feel like maybe he read Birthright. Like, because I think that that's something that everyone tells them to read. Like, if you're going to read Superman, you got to read Birthright. But they're all kind of like enduring, kind of like retelling of his origins. Like, the best Superman stories are the origin. So, you know.
The best storyline of Superman is the origin. Like, Superman always enters problems in his second act.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, Superman has the best origin in comic books. Like, stop. Like, I would say Peter Parker is a very close second.
Yes, easily.
But, God, there's a reason why everybody on the street knows that origin.
Yeah.
It's because it's so good, but it's also Moses, but it's so good.
I was gonna say it's positively biblical, but like it is in that regard. Yes. Like it's like the Western culture's Bible. Like that's one of the stories. Like we have, it's like it's up there. The Superman myth should be told like Paul Bunyan, like and Johnny Appleseed. Like it should be considered an American myth that is like part of our culture. Anyway.
Yes. 100%.
But yeah, so but with respect to this whole thing, regardless of what he's read and what he's not, I think that it's all leading to the One More Day reboot. I think that, like, especially when I started hearing rumblings about a crisis coming at the end or within this year we're in now, I was like, oh yeah, of course he's revealing his identity, because now we're pulling out all the stops. We can do anything. We're right back into Back in Black One More Day territory where it's like we're gonna undo it.
Oh. I just came up with a stupid idea. So, like, again, this new crisis that's gonna happen this year.
Yeah.
This is the first I've heard of it. I knew that we were getting metal to death metal or whatever it's called. If you go by Bleeding Cool, I knew that was happening, and I thought that was the whole thing leading to 5G. I didn't know that we were going to get 2 this year. Man, where are you going to have this time? Anyways,
I don't know.
Is there a possibility that this second crisis could be called Identity Crisis 2?
Oh no.
I mean, that just popped into my head, and because it primarily deals with Superman's identity and secret identities as a whole. I mean, is there a chance? Because remember, Brian Michael Bendis wrote Civil War 2, the title that nobody wanted.
No one wanted that. That
really wasn't a sequel to Civil War at all.
No, it's just another Civil War. How about this? Lois is killed. That's the Identity Crisis story. Like, and it's just so important that it drags the whole DC universe into it.
I mean, well, that's not a terrible idea, because one of the best DC comics published in the last 10 years is the Injustice tie-in comic. What kicks off Injustice?
The
death of Lois Lane.
Oh my God!
Lois Lane's death was also supposed to be the basic plot line of Justice League 2, the Zack Snyder sequel. That was going to be the reason why Superman was evil.
Ugh, yeah.
And then if you do the reset, Lois is back alive at the end of the storyline.
Exactly.
In issue one, she's dead. Issue 8, she's back alive, and now the whole continuity is reset, and there's no. Well, there would have to be a Jonathan Kent. Like, Jonathan Kent can't go anywhere.
Yes, you put. Here's the thing: are the Legion? I'm not.
Okay. So,
I'm not as well versed with Legion of superheroes, but like, are they immune to the ripple effect of time?
Okay, so I love the Legion of Superheroes. But they have been through now 6 reboots. 6.
Bendis is writing the Legion of Superheroes.
It is insane.
Oh my God.
Yes. Bendis. Okay, so now it's interesting. So again, we did that other video about 5G and talking about all that stuff. Right. And if you follow 5G and the rumors about it, again, we don't absolutely jack nothing.
Yep.
It seems like Jonathan Kent is going to be the Superman. Yes. So that's the one problem in your One More Day theory.
Right.
But what if the whole reason we aged up Jonathan Kent and sent him into the future is because that way we can reset the present day timeline, and Jonathan Kent in his time bubble in the future is protected. Now, in the past, the Legion has survived certain reboots.
Right.
That we have, in certain times, we have kept the old Legion past a reboot. 0 Hour was the first reboot of the Legion.
Right.
Up until that point, it was the original Legion from the 70s. In the Zero Hour, when they did the Zero issue, it was a brand new Legion. Now, here's the weird thing about that. In Zero Hour, they didn't change the numbering.
Oh my god.
So Legion of Superheroes, I'm just making up the numbers. Legion of Superheroes at the time, in like issue 72, it was the old team.
Yeah.
Then they did a Legion of Superheroes 0.
Right.
And it was the new team. And then the next issue was like Legion of Superheroes 74. They didn't go back to 1.
Oh my god. That's not
And
a
that
good
was
idea.
Yeah, and that was the time when Legion had 2 titles. There was Legion of Superheroes and then Legionnaires.
Yes. Oh my god.
You know, and they were both popular.
Yeah.
And then the next reboot is the Mark Waid. Oh, it's funny because Mark Waid rebooted the Legion twice. The next Legion reboot is, I believe, Identity. No, it's Infinite Crisis. I think Infinite Crisis is the next one.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, but that being that in your mindset, so Lois gets killed. Mm-hmm. They try and like the Identity Crisis is the crisis. It's like a Heroes in Crisis 2. Superman is miserable. He's sad. Now the question is the crisis going to be an Identity Crisis where it's in continuity, or is it a continuity reboot crisis? Because they could kill Lois. Superman retires. Jonathan comes back. He takes his father's place because he knows there can never be a world without a Superman.
Oh, man.
Or you reboot it like we're expecting. Superman like actively affects the reboot because he knows Lois will come back, or it's a consequence of the fight he has to have where Lois comes back. Lois comes back. She doesn't remember anybody.
Yeah.
And
here's the other thing.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Keep going. I was like, here's another theory.
Yeah.
Okay. I think you might have hit on something.
Yeah.
So yes, let's say this Identity Crisis happens.
Yes.
Lois dies.
Right.
Superman gets depressed.
Yep.
He or whatever. He spends the entire storyline trying to bring Lois back, trying to bring Lois back. He does something that resets the timeline, and when he brings Lois back, she doesn't remember who he is.
Right.
And Superman is the only one that remembers the past timeline.
See,
just like the Superman 2000 reboot. And then that leads Superman to be like, I can't take this, I retire.
Right.
And then when John comes back from the future, John is like, he's like, hey, Dad. And Superman's like, they're the only two that remember each other.
Right. See, I think it's going to be more tragic than that. But I'm building off what you said. I think it's
more
ahead. Like Lois and Superman are going to be both rebooted.
Ooh.
Neither of them
and
will
then
remember.
John comes back.
John comes back and he's the only one who remembers.
Wow.
So he's like a Wally West where he has no parents. And so the future is, and so that would also cause John to be like, well, then what am I doing here? And he just sticks with the Legion of Superheroes in the future, thereby getting rid of John, making it less complicated,
get rid of
so that we can have because Superman. Here's the thing: if Lois Lane comes back and she doesn't remember him,
yes,
he is still not gonna want to bang the cute firefighter girl. Like the fact is, he's still gonna be sad. You know?
Well, he's still gonna be for Lois because Superman is for Lois. That's the way he always has been.
Especially if he has a son with her, even if she doesn't remember him. So like the only way to make it not messy is if he doesn't remember either. And Bendis loves the tragic. So like John remembering both of them, but having and they're technically his parents, but they don't remember him. That makes him more more interesting, in air quotes, of course. But that also makes it less complicated. So he goes away. So now Superman can date, and it's not like gross because because John's flying around going like, "Oh, good, my dad's on another date with my not mom."
All right, so I think, to be honest with you, again, we know nothing. We're speculating about speculation.
Yep.
I think it's a fascinating theory.
Right.
And I think you have hit on some stuff that they're probably going to do. I don't know if they're going to do everything about it.
No.
I mean, if I see Identity Crisis 2 announced, I'm going to groan out loud. But I understand synergy SEO, why you would call it that. Are there any other pieces about your theory that you have that we haven't hit on? Because I would love to, again, okay, cool. Let's talk about then the only real other comparison we have to this, Spider-Man One More Day.
Exactly.
Okay? And let's talk about, because Marvel did this already.
Yeah.
And let's talk about how successful we think it is. What do we think about this? Because I'm going to say a controversial theory right now. I think One More Day was the right decision. Even though I love that I love Peter Parker and Mary Jane being together.
Yeah.
Do I like the storyline of the Devil? No. But I will tell you this. The revitalization of those books, the 10 years post One More Day are like 10 years of solid Spider-Man. Most of Brand New Day works. There's some clunkers in there, but you could tell like everybody was fired up again.
Yeah.
I can't, and so that's why I think, and the sales went through the roof as well.
That's right.
And that's the great thing about it is that most of those stories weren't terrible. They're actually pretty good. And it also leads us to one of my favorite Spider-Man storylines of all time. What you think of Dan Slott or not, I think Superior Spider-Man is strong.
Superior Spider-Man
it's really good.
Is excellent. And the thing is, with Superior Spider-Man, you really, I think you need One More Day in order to get Superior Spider-Man.
Yeah, you do.
There is no, canceling that book, then rebranding it, then coming out with it again, and then ending it again and undoing it. Worst decision they could make. Superior Spider-Man was selling.
Sure. Yeah.
Because Superior Spider-Man supplanted Amazing Spider-Man.
They should have just kept it.
Superior Spider-Man supplanted Amazing Spider-Man, so it was doing those sales. But when you have a book that's called something new, that has sales like Amazing, and then it's still carrying on, you don't cancel that book.
I agree. I've always thought that it's funny because they Dan sort of did the solution later on.
Yeah.
I think they should have kept Superior Spider-Man just going.
Agreed.
And then with it, brought in a new Amazing Spider-Man #1.
Yes.
Now it's funny, the clone conspiracy saga 2 that Dan did is anyways. But the end of that storyline is that Dr. Octopus gets a brand new Peter body.
Exactly.
Basically.
Right.
And so he becomes the Superior Spider-Man again.
Yep.
I think that Dan should have used that ending for Superior Spider-Man. That's how Peter should have come back.
Yeah.
And then that way you could continue Superior Spider-Man and then have Peter be back.
Right. Yeah, because obviously you can sell multiple Spider-Man books. You literally built an audience from nothing for a totally new Spider-Man. People who are like, I like Spider-Man because he looks cool, but I wish he was an asshole. Oh, there's a book for you. It's called Superior Spider-Man or Scarlet Spider.
Yeah.
Well,
the thing about it that storyline, I remember when I first heard that storyline, I was like, this sounds dumb.
Yeah.
And then when I read it, I was like, oh, this is great.
Yep.
This is holy cow. Spider-Man being a villain is very compelling.
Yes.
It
was great.
And
money on the table. They're just wasting money not having that book.
Yeah. So, but I agree. I exactly agree with your point. We don't get Superior Spider-Man without One More Day.
I agree.
Now, what do you think about? Or no, they called it Brand New Day. I guess One More Day became Brand New Day. Brand New Day again is what I meant. Excuse me. Is Brand New Day? I think is mostly successful.
Right.
I
can't deny it.
What do you think about?
I hate it. I hated everything about it, and I think that the creative teams were a great idea on paper, but a poor execution in practice. I think that the thing about it was it's undeniable that the sales were through the roof for Spider-Man. Also, the Slaughterhouse-5 process of let's get all these writers and make it come out every other week or something
It was a weekly book. It was 3 weeks a month.
Right.
It was 3 weeks a month.
Nuts, incredible, successful, and it infused a huge amount of money and new creators and all this stuff. It works. Superficially speaking, if I were an editor, I would be happy that I made that decision. As a reader, I was happy with where Spider-Man was at the time and with the creative team they had already. JMS was a good name to have on that book.
Yeah.
He was a solid. It wasn't like when they rebooted Green Lantern and they were like, kill Hal Jordan, literally out of nowhere. Let's kill off not kill off Hal Jordan, but let's make him Parallax. Let's put in this new guy. That was literally out of freaking nowhere. Let's get Ron Mars. He'll do it. But he wasn't doing Green Lantern beforehand. You know who was doing Green Lantern?
Although I will say,
somebody
we don't remember.
But exactly.
I will say, although I love Kyle's run, but I understand your point.
But you can't deny it was successful and it worked and it made a lot of people pissed off, but it created new fans and it made a new thing and we got a new character out of it. But it's not like that because JMS was selling. The Spider-Man book was selling.
Well, let me ask you this. I'm going to put the fly in your ointment that everybody puts out. The JMS run is a solid run.
I love that run.
It's really good until Sins Past.
Sins Past was the first time that Spider-Man's editors, and more importantly, Joe Quesada, got into that. Started putting their hands into the thing. Now, that being said, the concept was JMS's. That was a mistake. It was a straight-up mistake. It's why he said in Marvel Comics 1000, he got a chance to write a Spider-Man page again. And in that page, he put that he himself regretted Sins Past. He could have said One More Day. He could have said Skin Deep, which is the other one I hate. For me, JMS is...
Oh, I don't remember Skin Deep.
No one does. It's
okay, cool.
It's a thud in the run, right? Because you got everything's great, everything's cool. Sins Past is the one time when everyone went, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" And by the way,
what is this?
Yes, and I think I don't know. I'm not going to justify it. It's just it was a horrible thing. I hate it, and it's terrible. Then after that, New Avengers and everything like that, it's great again.
Mm-hmm.
And then Skin Deep is just why did you do that? But Back in Black also, of course, it wouldn't exist without the One More Day initiative, and wouldn't exist without Civil War.
Yeah.
But the New Avengers stuff was great. The Digger arc, the Shathra arc, everything about what he was doing. Even though
I love the whole Moreland and Gideon thing.
Yeah,
that was great.
Yeah, I hated the other. It's funny. I defend the JMS run, but I also the other and Sins Past and One More Day. Some of the worst Spider-Man stories of all time in one of my favorite runs of all time. It's so bizarre.
Yeah. But that also means the great thing about that is that J. Michael Straczynski was swinging for the fences, and that's I love and so when you swing for the fences, sometimes you're going to strike out.
That's right, and he's never doing something that he didn't think was a big idea, except for Skin Deep. But there's a lot of but with that but
I'm going to Google this thing. I gotta remember what this is.
Basically, the long and short of it is JMS retcons that Peter had a friend in high school who was more of a geek than he was. It's like a cracked mirror version of Peter Parker. What if Peter Parker remained a troll? You know what I mean? What if instead of Peter Parker becoming a hero, he became a troll?
Okay, well, it's just possible. All right, that sounds like J. Michael Straczynski was just responding to fans.
I think he was. He's look, this guy is you. But yeah, he retconned in that Peter Parker had this friend in high school, and he's a big asshole, and then he gets powers and he burns down their house. He is his role is just to get Peter and May and Mary Jane into Avengers Mansion or Avengers Tower.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they're there.
Sure.
Is because this jerk burned their house down.
It's funny because again, Brand New Day, man. I remember I tried it out.
That's the thing. Because everyone tried it out.
At that point, I kind of dropped off the J. Michael Straczynski run. I think Skin Deep and Sins of Evil.
Sins Past. What the thing that killed it for everyone.
Sins Past. Gwen Stacy. Anyways, and One More Day kind of dropped me off. But then I was like, okay, this is a brand new starting point.
Yep.
I'm interested to see where this goes. And again, there are a lot of stumbles in it, but there are a lot of really good storylines in it. And then it leads us into the Dan Slott run.
Right. Which I argue is one of the best.
Because
not his
I
entire
agree.
run, but But that
again, it's just like J. Michael Straczynski. We just talked about how J. Michael Straczynski has a great Spider-Man run, even though he has a couple clunkers. Dan Slott's the same way.
Same way.
Dan Slott, I agree. I think Dan Slott is one of the greatest Spider-Man writers of all time. Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean that he doesn't have some clunkers in there, because I don't think anybody likes Red Goblin. But
I think Red Goblin's the least egregious thing he does in the list of egregious things he does.
And we talked about Clone Conspiracy, but Big Time is fantastic.
Can't argue.
Superior Spider-Man is amazing. And then you have to give him Spider-Verse.
Right.
Because I think Spider-Verse is a fucking home run.
I recognize the I hate Spider-Verse. And
get out of here. You don't have a heart.
Well, I hate Spider-Verse because it only seeks to illustrate the lack of specialness that is Peter Parker, because I have a real problem with redundancies. Superman's great.
But you like the DC universe.
Right. Well, that's the thing, is that, I love Batman. 3 Batmans? Pass. 5 Robins? No. I have a problem with redundancies. Superman, he's great, but 4 Superman, get out of here. Unless it's in the 90s, in which case,
I'm
awesome.
I'm the fan where I love the moment where Oliver Queen comes back from the dead,
right,
and Connor Hawke is Green Arrow, and Connor Hawke goes, well, what am I going to call me now? And Oliver's like, well, you're Green Arrow, I'm Green Arrow, who cares? And I'm like, yep, that's right.
See, but that's Connor Hawke advances to Green Arrow, that's story, you know what I mean? I like Nightwing too. Sure. But for me, it's
the ultimate redundancy.
Yeah, for me, it's a Spider-Verse. It's all you're doing is basically saying that the reason why people like Spider-Man is because he has a cool costume and great powers, and that's not why I like Spider-Man.
I understand your point, but I also kind of like Crisis on Infinite Earths, the TV event.
Yes.
Where even though a lot of it is gobbledygook and doesn't make much sense, it's fun because you're seeing all these characters meet each other. And I felt that Spider-Verse was the same way. It's an event where it could collapse under the weight of its own plot.
Yes.
But because it doesn't, I'm willing to give it a pass.
The other thing is, with Superman, 1000 Superman, fine. Batman, to that degree, also. For me, Spider-Man's a poor kid from Queens. When you give him a wrist-mounted interdimensional hopper, you ruin who Spider-Man is.
Yeah, it's a little far, but yeah.
I want him, the only, as far into space as I want him, I liked him in Secret Wars, where he's this is out of my depth. I don't know what the hell this is. That's fun. But when you make him an interdimensional hopping duplicate of 1,000 other guys, most of them are super powerful, I'm that's not for me. That's not Spider-Man.
It's my argument against the MCU Spider-Man.
Right.
Is that the MCU Spider-Man basically has an Iron Man suit on. Right. And to me, that's not Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Spider-Man's basically wearing tights that can rip off at any point. If he has a suit that can call down missiles from space, that's not Spider-Man.
Well, he's not going to have that forever. They're going to break those glasses.
I freaking hope so, man. Because I get so tired of that Spider-Man suit being able to do kill mode and everything that we can think of at the last moment. Because it's a Deus Ex Machina when Peter can just be like, oh yeah, I have laser beams inside.
Right.
Fire.
Yeah.
Then he's never in danger.
I mean, Homecoming, the whole point of it at the end of it is it's not about the suit. Because he loses the suit and he saves the day in a crappy costume.
And that's the thing I appreciated about Homecoming. But we didn't have that in Far From Home, or I call Spider-Man Lost in Spider-Man's European Vacation, as I call that.
I know, it's
Spider-Man National Lampoon's European Vacation.
What is with these terrible titles for Spider-Man?
I don't know, they're bad.
They're really bad.
I mean, I'm now expecting the third one to be called Spider-Man Homeless.
Yeah.
I
wholly expect that.
Or Spider-Man Home on the Range.
Right? Spider-Man Homework?
Maybe work that. I don't know.
But it's terrible.
Anyways, but it's interesting. It's talking about Spider-Man One More Day. The thing that everybody jives against is the devil.
Yes.
I think if they had done the exact same storyline, it reset the status quo and whatever, and had done, and it's funny because the one thing I don't like about Brand New Day, well, there's multiple things I don't like about Brand New Day, but mostly I like Brand New Day.
Yes.
And the one big thing I don't like about Brand New Day is they introduce this idea that it wasn't just the devil thing, the deal with the devil.
Yeah.
It was that there is some other Doctor Strange spell that when people see it complicated, it overcomplicated.
Well, here's the thing. They didn't like... Everyone agreed the devil thing was terrible. So Quesada's like, okay, so he wrote another story called Omit. It's One Moment in Time, which is an acronym for omit.
Yes.
We're omitting the devil from the story, which is that the secret that Mary Jane asks Mephisto is... He'll never agree to it if it's a deal with the devil. You have to make it so that you're not doing it. So then Mephisto's like, okay. So then Mephisto changes continuity so that he does it, but he does it in continuity where he doesn't really do it. Actually, Reed Richards, Doctor Strange, and whoever, and Iron Man, get together and use a memory wiping machine, and they do it.
Yeah, which is ridiculous.
F you. But like, well, because
yeah,
well, and the only reason why that exists is just to shut up the people who don't read Spider-Man because he made a deal with the devil. And he's like, no, see, in story reasons, Mary Jane doesn't want to be with him anymore because she wants kids and she won't let her father die, or like the father of her child die. And I'm like, that sucks. And no, for me, that whole thing, like the One More Day is irrelevant. Like, whether it's the deal with the devil or it's like Magic, Doctor Strange, Reed Richards, I don't care. The trajectory of where that story was going was up. And as a result of the change, it went back. And they wanted to have their cake and eat it too, where it's like, we want all the continuity and all the history, but we just don't want this one fundamental aspect of this character. And I'm like, then you've changed everything. And I dropped.
And that's what we've talked. And that's what we've talked about. Like when I mentioned like the New 52, where it should have been a hard reboot. That's the problem. Is that these creators? It's like you can do that. You can do that. But if you're gonna do it, you cannot. It's either it is a hard change, or we're staying in the continuity we are. And you're not changing anything. You cannot have both, because when you have both, that's where it becomes a jumbled mess.
And it also betrays that your stories are not yours. And that's why I dropped Spider-Man and everything for a long time after One More Day, because I was like, oh, my stories aren't mine. They are always going to be beholden to editorial influence. There is no reason to read comic books anymore.
You know what? And that's why this is not a comic book thing.
Right.
One of the best examples of this storytelling method, doing the exact same thing like we're hinting about with Superman and with Spider-Man, this sort of devil's deal and resetting, is Star Trek 2009.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of Trek fans are going to come at me, but I love that movie, and I love the original series. Star Trek is one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
That movie, with the way that they reset their timeline, speaks exactly to the thing you just said, where you're like, it made it feel like the stories weren't mine. That movie was like, no, all those stories are happening over here. And we're over here. So those storylines can still exist. And the funny thing about that is that Picard, which is going to come out, it might be out by the time this video releases. I don't know what date it happens. February or something. I don't know. January. I don't know. Anyways, it's continuing this timeline. And then they just announced that the Noah Hawley stuff is probably going to happen over here. So they have two timelines, and neither one invalidates the other.
Right.
You know, so if you saw Star Trek 2009 and you were like, I'm done with Star Trek, cool. All these stories still happen. You know, and so it fixes the problem that you had. And I think that might be the best example of this storytelling device.
Yeah. I mean, well, and One More Day is essentially that. It's just that, like, only Peter and Mary Jane remember the way it used to be, and even Peter doesn't remember. So, yeah, never mind, actually. Peter doesn't remember, and neither does Mary Jane anymore. It's really weird.
One final question I want to ask you. And I want to bring it back to Superman. So we talked about how in this weird speculation that we're like, okay, Lois's death seems to be a great inciting incident for this. It seems to be a great thing. We're like, okay.
Especially because nobody knows what to do with her anymore, except for that Greg Rucka series. But, like...
I argue that's just bad writers, because to me, Lois Lane is one of the most fascinating characters in DC.
I agree,
but I agree.
They're not doing it either. Like,
the fact that there's not a Daily Planet series blows my mind.
I know.
Because that's just an idea farm. Like
there should be a Daily Bugle book. There should be a Daily Planet book. I agree.
Yep. Yep, I agree. And there should always be a GCPD book, a Gotham Center book.
Yeah. At least there was one.
Oh, yeah. But that's the advantage. At least there was one of them is great. I would be like, let's do one where Gordon is in charge. It's Gordon Harvey Bullock, man, doing The Wire in Gotham.
I can't believe that doesn't exist.
That book would just so many ideas for that book. Anyways, and I put that out in the world to anybody listening, Mr. Bendis.
Right. Play to your strengths.
Write the hell out of that book.
He would.
Yeah, write the hell out of that book because that book just could be 500 issues and we'd never get tired of it.
Make it a black label and do anything.
Right? Yeah. So to bring it back to Superman, the thing that we sort of happened upon with One More Day is that there has to be a price.
Yes.
And it is better served when this price is given to the hero by a character. So let me ask you this question. Because I really don't understand Apex, Lex, and all that stuff.
No, it'll all be undone pretty soon anyway. It's almost over.
Okay. Well, my question is it leads into this, is that do we think that this, whatever this event is, Identity Crisis 2, as we like to call it, which I actually think might be what it's called. Anyways,
right?
I think we might have, consciousness of the universe. We might have stumbled upon it.
Yeah.
Anyways, do we think, okay, is this going to be Apex Lex?
No.
And Superman?
Well, I think that by the time we get there, Perpetua will have taken away his powers and he'll be back to being regular Lex Luthor again.
Oh, really? Oh, so you think the Scott Snyder Justice League story will
I think there's only one more issue left of it.
Okay.
I think... Honestly, if we're gonna if we're gonna introduce a devil into it, I think the devil's gonna be Barbatos.
Or Barbados?
Yeah.
Is it Barbados or it's probably Barbados? Yeah, you're right. I always call him Barbados.
I know. Yeah.
By the way, I'm just gonna call shenanigans on Barbados because if you read the Grant Morrison run, which is all about Barbados, none of the new Barbados stuff fits into that. So just throwing it out there.
No. But Scott and Grant have talked about it. I know.
Should have made a brand new character. Just throwing that out there.
His design sucks.
So. Oh, they show what he actually looks like now?
In Dark Knight's Metal, we see him. He looks like a stupid hooded dude with wing. I'm like, that's the lamest thing you could do.
I've read Dark Knight's Metal, and I guess I've forgotten it. So.
It's not hard.
There's so much, dude. There's so much cosmic-y. I can't keep it straight.
I know, and I hate it because there's so much reverence for Neil Gaiman and for Morrison in there. Snyder really wants to be look, I got to use Dream. I asked Neil Gaiman and he said yes. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. It's not part of it. Nobody cares.
Okay, interesting. Because I kind of was like, oh, well, maybe there's maybe this is how we'll get rid of Apex Lex. Lex will be like, I'll do this, and Superman's take away your powers. Or I'm trying.
No, I think Perpetua's gonna make that go away.
Okay, well, I'm trying to think about, because if you do Missile Spitlick, which you could, because again, if you're going back to the Alan Moore theory, it's retreading, right? We've seen it before, and I don't want Superman to make a deal with Neron, the DC universe.
That would be so lame. No, I think it will be Mixed Spitlick, and I think the reason why we know that is because A, Bendis read it, B, clearly he's not afraid to do things that they already did before. We just had the Truth Story arc, and it's called Truth.
It's called Truth.
He doesn't care. But I didn't do it though, so it's different. And I think that's
Yeah.
But I think we're gonna see that. You know how what's it called? Brainiac, he takes over Lex's body. We're gonna see that. I think we're gonna see the rogues. I think we're gonna see somebody try to kill Superman at work or something. When Toyman blew up the.
And it all leads to a face-off at the new Fortress of Solitude.
Hey, there are a couple of cool cameos from Batman and Shazam and stuff in there. They could show up. They could be in that.
Let me ask you this. Oh, I came up with an idea and I forgot. Well, let me say this.
Yeah.
Let me say this. We've been, criticizing a lot here. I do want to give a bit of praise to Mr. Bendis, who we know is watching.
Big fan of the show.
Hello, Brian. Please leave a like on the video.
Yeah, please.
And a comment down below. Just don't threaten my mom, please. Anyways, I will say this. Brian melding the origin of the Legion of Superheroes
Yes.
into current Superman continuity is, I think, a genius idea. And I think it is the best idea in his current Superman run. And I kind of think it's better than the Superman identity reveal. And part of the reason why I say that is because I have a file folder in my Google Docs about what I would do in my Superman run or my Superman ideas.
Yeah.
And Mr. Bendis beat me to it.
Oh no.
Yep. Yeah, it wasn't like this, but like I for years had had the idea where I was like, oh, there needs to be some sort of cosmic-y event that Superman saves, and the whole universe loves Superman, and then that explains why Superman is still famous a thousand years in the future, because he's the greatest super. And for years I was like, I'm going to tell that story. It's going to be like a Galactus type event. Right. Superman's going to save everybody, and then the Legion shows up, and they're like, "Thank you, Superman. This is the event that inspires the United Planets."
Right.
So, damn you, Mr. Bendis, but also awesome job.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, that's the greatest thing in his run, and it's really smart. So, kudos for that. And I kind of want to be like, give us more of that.
Right.
Less Rogol-Zar, more United Planets.
Much less Rogol-Zar. I honestly feel like, I mean, that's where he wants to go. I think he's just like, this is all kind of like still cleaning house for him, where he's like, I really just want to tell stories.
I want to reset.
Like, I just want to get to this point so I can start doing that.
You know, it's funny because the whole thing I love about your theory is that, again, there's a lot of evidence for it.
Right.
And there's also a lot of evidence when you connect Bendis back to his Marvel stuff.
Exactly.
Because when you look at his Avengers run, what did he do? He killed off the Avengers and made a new team.
Got rid of them. Moved them on, yeah.
What did he do when he took over Daredevil? He flipped out the identity and was like, new status quo.
Yeah.
What did he do with the X-Men? Oh, the young X-Men are back.
Right.
New status quo.
Yeah.
So we haven't seen that with Superman.
No.
And maybe that's because DC editorial was like, you gotta slowly. We can't.
Yeah, you can't.
We can't rip off the Band-Aid.
Right. No, Marvel, you can flip the table when you first walk in the room. DC, you gotta take your time.
Yeah.
They'll get mad. They'll leave. They'll quit.
Well, okay. Final question for this.
Okay.
I think it's a great theory.
Thank you.
The one book that everybody thinks Brian Michael Bendis should write is Batman.
That's the one I think you should write.
Because he writes crime books, and he's very good at it.
And Batman Universe is the best Bat book of the last 5 years, at least.
Oh, I haven't read it. Is it really good?
I love it. And now,
cool.
Darrington is 90% of that book. The art is phenomenal.
He's a great artist.
He is so good. But his Batman has humanity and humor, but it's not awkward and odd and poorly timed. But there's gravitas and there's grit, and he does take him into space and do all kinds of crazy crap, but like he still remains Batman. Just it's a clear and present, like, this is what Bendis would do with Batman, and it's all cohesive and it doesn't really meander. It's a really solid, and it's 12 issues or something. Like it's a solid run. It's just a good book, and it's like it's proof positive he should have Batman.
All right, so we've clearly established that Mr. Bendis likes to reset things.
Yeah.
Do you have any, because I don't, do you have any ideas, how would Bendis reset or change Batman?
I mean,
his status quo is to reset these things.
Right? I mean, if I were him, I'd put most of the Robins away and bring back Alfred. Like,
I think Alfred's coming back real quick.
There's no question. Well, like, once they killed Alfred and then they were like, oh no, he's really dead. I'm like, okay, yeah, the crisis couldn't come fast enough.
Yeah.
Like, that crisis is going to break. That also, they're definitely killing Lois.
I mean, I would honestly say that I bet the only reason they killed Alfred is because there's some sort of reset coming.
Right. They were like, yeah. Well, as I don't know, I don't have confirmation, but I've heard, because I remember in one of the later issues, Batman says, no, Clayface is standing in for Alfred.
Yes. Yeah.
I guarantee you the higher-ups were like, no, really kill him, though.
Mm-hmm.
And they was like, what? They're never going to forgive me for this. And they're like, yeah, we'll bring him back in the crisis. It's fine.
Yeah. So you think we'll table the Robins?
Yeah, I think.
And Alpha comes back.
Yeah, if Bendis had the button on the if he had his finger on the continuity button, he'd get rid of 2 or 3 Robins. Like
you think he'd kill them, or they're just gone?
No, they don't.
Well,
I'm saying, like, if he was like continuity, if he was like, oh, in the Crisis, I want this, this, and this, and I'll take Batman, he'd undo like Damian, and Jason Todd, or but like he'd scale it back. I think and I know people are gonna be like, that's you talking, because I'm like, yeah, get rid of Damian and clean house, re-kill Jason Todd. You haven't done anything good with him since Red Hood. But I think that with him, he's a purist with Batman. He's a purist with Superman. So I think that for him, he'd be like, no. Make it clean. Make it scaled back.
I'm going to say this. You bring up your Jason Todd point. Yeah. I think Jason Todd should have been Leviathan. Just throwing that out there.
Why not?
Yep. Right. I think because who cares about a 1970s Manhunter guy that we haven't seen in 10 years?
Literally nobody.
Yeah. I actually, when they revealed it as Jason Todd, I was like, that's cool, because that way we can stop him being an anti-hero. And if you make Jason Todd the biggest supervillain in the DC universe, I'm in.
Right.
I'm in.
Yep. Literally, that's one of 2 things you could do with Jason Todd. Either he kills the Joker and takes his place, or he becomes the evil Batman of the DC universe.
Yeah. And I like the idea of him as the evil Batman. That's really, and also making him primarily a Superman villain.
Right.
Very interesting.
I love it. Well, because that also plays into the Nightwing thing. Because like Nightwing is Nightwing because he's like, I'm following in Superman's footsteps.
Yeah. Superman names him.
Yeah. Well, Nightwing was
Superman is his uncle.
Yeah. Superman. Well, like Nightwing is a Kryptonian superhero that he models himself after.
Yeah. So it's a thing that a lot of people don't realize about Nightwing, and it's why he's my favorite comic book character. Is that Nightwing's 2 biggest inspirations are Batman's involved, but Nightwing's heroes, if you look at all the choices Dick has made, are Superman and Commissioner Gordon.
Right. Yeah.
That's the reason why he becomes a cop.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
So
no,
but anyways,
DC doesn't know what they have, because Nightwing is like the perfect template for the legacy and the future of the DC universe. It's like, just let him be. But so with respect to that, I think Bendis would start Batman kind of at 0, make him a little like more youthful, a little more fun, infuse a little more like Silver Age into him.
Interesting. Well, fine with that.
If he wanted,
interesting.
I don't think he does. I think he just.
It's the obvious choice. He'll take him. He'll take him.
He didn't. I think he wanted to. Yeah. Well. Anyway, we don't know.
Well, the rumors out there is that everybody apparently they offered him Batman first, and then he said, "What about Superman?"
Right.
It's the obvious choice.
Yeah.
But again, Batman's one of these characters that. How can you say no to Batman? You can't.
Right.
Like eventually. Brian Michael Bendis will be writing the actual Batman title. It will happen.
The fact is, he had a Batman book. Like, they gave him his own Batman book. It was a Walmart book, but now it's in a regular book, and it's great.
Sure. I'll say, by the way, fun fact, most of those Walmart books, great.
Oh, yeah. That Superman book by Tom King, surprisingly great.
Yeah. It's really good. The whole fact of the matter, man, like I grew up reading comics from a Walmart.
Yeah.
So there were no comic book shops anywhere near me. So if it wasn't for a Walmart, I would not be reading comic books right now. I wouldn't even know what comic books were right now.
Yeah.
So like as soon as they started doing that, I saw so many people complain, and I was like, get over it.
Yeah.
This is about creating new readers and giving people more access.
I agree.
But anyways. Mr. Bendis, thank you for watching, and I look forward to your Batman.
Yeah, thanks so much for another great episode you watched.
You didn't have to write that comment about my dog, but it's fine, whatever.
Yeah. I've been written by Bendis by now. No. But listen, so I think they're going to win more Day Superman. I appreciate you focusing on that, because I was like, I just said it because I was like, I think that's what's going to happen. But like,
I think you're in, man. I think you're seeing I think you're reading the tea leaves.
Yeah,
I think you tuned in.
Yeah, I think we stumbled upon the whole roadmap for what they're going to do for the next year. Like, we got the Identity Crisis 2, we got the Crisis reboot, we got the Jonathan Kent status quo. It's all coming together. So come back to this episode later on when it all happens and blame us for it.
Yep. I look for all the YouTube comments where people are like, they were right, like a year later.
Yeah, right?
Or close enough.
They only come back when we're wrong.
I know. I noticed that on my, like, I don't even really make YouTube videos anymore. I just do them every once in a while at youtube.com/Jawin. You can see that. It's whenever I have time, because I honestly don't have time anymore.
Right.
But I'll have people comment on videos from 5 years ago, be like, "You were wrong," and I was like, "Well, no shit, because it was 5 years ago, you idiots."
Yeah. No, man, I know. Yeah.
It's like, look, if I made a YouTube video in 1985, which would have been impossible, by the way, but if I had and be like, there will never be another Star Wars movie,
right?
You can't comment on now and be like, you were wrong. Who cares?
Yeah, reporting
idiot?
in from 2020, guy was wrong, idiot.
Yeah.
Like, thanks.
Yeah.
I can never say that they'll never do anything anymore.
No, because they will do anything.
Yeah, it'll all be happening. The only thing they won't do is my books into TV shows or movies. That's the only thing they won't do. Until they do.
Well, I mean, you can guarantee that if you just never sell them. If you never sell them, then you can absolutely guarantee that'll never happen.
I would rather be wrong about that.
Yeah.
But Jason, thanks so much for joining me as always.
Dude, it's always a pleasure. It's always a blast.
Same here. But yeah, like before you go, obviously we got to tell them more about Jupiter Jet, which you can check out.
Yeah.
In the
if you like, if you liked any of our fun ruminations, then please go check out my comic book written by me and my wife, Ashley Victoria Robinson, Jupiter Jet and the Forgotten Radio. It's on Kickstarter right now. JupiterJetComic.com. It's a fun read. It's Mark Russell called it the writer of the Flintstones and Snagglepuss and Wonder Twins. I had him read the first issue, and he said it was one of the most optimistic comic books he's read in the last 10 years.
Wow, that's a nice praise.
So,
I like that.
It was very nice praise because he's a very talented writer. And Mr. Bendis, who is watching right now, as we know, he likes him as well. So
that's right. That's real, by the way. He actually did read the book.
But JupiterJetComic.com. We have a lot of great rewards, and help us make our independent comic book.
See you next time, everybody.